What am I doing? So okay. Yeah, hi. My name's Nico, if you didn't already know, and if I posted this on YouTube. And today we're gonna be looking at the Christian community of Jerusalem, their history, past and present. And sorry, give me one second. So, yeah, the Christian community has had a very long and turbulent history, and let's just go in. So, in the modern day, Christians today, sorry. In the modern day, Christians make up around 2% of the total population of modern day Jerusalem. And historically, they made up around 25% of the population in the 1920s. But since then, several conflicts and migrations and declining birth rates have um, or have strongly decreased the population. And today there are 158 total churches in Jerusalem split across a bunch of different denominations. And so these are said denominations. The biggest one and the most historically like long lasting is the Greek Orthodox Church of Jerusalem, the Jerusalem Patriarchate. And the Greek comes in because that is their liturgical language and also the liturgy they use, which is the Divine Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom, is typically referred to as Greek because it mainly came from the Greek speaking city of Constantinople, Byzantine Empire. And there is another Greek denomination here too. There is the Melkites, the Melkite Greek Catholic Church, which were originally part of that original uh, Greek Christian community, but they have since entered into communion with Rome over several issues, which we will go into later. And there's also the Roman Catholic Church, which has was briefly expelled from the Holy Land, but have since come back in the 1800s. And they have the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, which was abolished after they left. And then since then, they have reestablished it. And there are a lot of big Roman Catholic churches in Jerusalem, big basilicas, and a lot of modern churches that they've built. But not that much of Jerusalem is Latin Catholic. Again, most of them are either Greek Orthodox or Melkite Greek Catholic. And the other important group is the Armenian Orthodox, the Armenian, or also known as the Armenian Apostolic Church. They a lot of them historically immigrated to the city of Jerusalem, and they make up their own quarter, known as the Armenian quarter, which is distinct from the Christian quarter of the old city. And so here are some of the other important groups. So in the Oriental Orthodox family, where this includes the Armenians as well, there's the Copts, Ethiopians, and Syriacs. They have a much smaller presence and they have a lot less land in the Holy Sepulchre than these groups, but they are still present and they have some churches separate from the Holy Sepulchre that they celebrate in as well. And apart from these historic apostolic groups, there's also Protestant churches, more modern ones in Jerusalem. There are several small Anglican and Lutheran communities, as well as non-denominational. There's an also non-denominational community, and they, rather than the Holy Sepulchre, they have their own site of pilgrimage called the Garden Tomb. So this is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This is the most important site in all of Christendom. And historically, this was owned by the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate, and today they still own it. In the Crusader period, though, they lost control of this, and the Latin Patriarch and the Latin liturgy were imposed onto this space. After the Crusades failed, it was handed back to the Greek Orthodox. But then in the 1850s, they reached an agreement where all the other groups who had connection to Jerusalem, such as all the Oriental Orthodox churches, Armenians, Copts, Ethiopians, and Syrians, they got partial ownership as well. And this was part of the status quo agreement. And although Copts and Syriacs and also Ethiopians, although they don't have as much history of living in Jerusalem, over time they did a lot of pilgrimages to the Holy Land, and because of that, they were given rights to this. So in the middle is the rotunda. This is like the edicule where Jesus's tomb is said to have been where Jesus's tomb is said to be. And there is also again all these gray shared spaces. And you see every other church has their own little sites. The Armenians have the Chapel of St. Helena, and the Ethiopians have their monastery on the site of the Holy Sepulchre. And there's, yeah, so very interesting. And we will go into why specifically there is such plurality other than just the fact of there being different denominations later. So today right now we'll get into the origins of the community. So in the biblical narrative, or sorry, in the biblical era, in the gospel narrative, there is obviously the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus, all said to have been in the city of Jerusalem. And the original community was headed by Jewish Christians, which are no longer a prevalent group in the city, although most of them have been like sort of, um, I'm forgetting the word. They've been like mixed into the community, so they're not a present group anymore, really. And during this time, there was the Council of Jerusalem, which was the first recorded Christian council, which was a debate between whether or not Gentile converts to the Christian religion had to follow Mosaic law. And this was presided by James right here, who I have an Orthodox Byzantine icon of. So the community was headed by James, the brother of Jesus. So he was considered the first bishop of Jerusalem as well. And he has successors today, both the Latin Patriarch Pierre Battista and also the Greek Patriarch Theophilos II, if I remember, oh, sorry, if I remember his name correctly. And the biggest event to hit the community was the destruction of the temple in 70 AD following the revolt. And this was very monumental for Christian history because their connection to the sort of temple and the city of Jerusalem was severed. And because of this, since there was no longer a temple sacrifice, the Eucharist became the center of worship ra rather than the temple. So because the faith became portable, it was no longer tied to a specific place, sort of like the Jewish exile. And the Christians in the city, they saw this destruction as a sort of like fulfillment of biblical prophecy. So that was interesting. And oh yeah, another very important thing is that the Christian community fled the city, and according to early tradition, they fled to the city of Pella, which was east in the Jordan, to escape the siege. And the church leadership became increasingly Gentile, and also um, the administrative center of Christianity moved to other cities such as Antioch, Alexandria, and Rome. And today, these are still very important um, Christian um, bishoprics today. You have the bishops of Antioch and Alexandria in both the Oriental Orthodox and Eastern Orthodox churches, and also the Bishop of Rome, the leader of the Roman Catholic Church. And this later led to the Pentarchy, which was the sort of, how do I say this? Which was the structure of church leadership for a very long time, which involved all these cities as well as Constantinople and Jerusalem because it later became uh, patriarchate as well. And so these are the very important events that have taken in in the Christian community over there. Sorry, I'm just gonna get water real quick. So an important event was the development of a rite, the Jerusalem rite, which is no longer used in a major capacity in any of the churches, called the Liturgy of St. James. And this was both used in Greek and Syriac. On the coastal cities, it would be used in Greek. More inland, it would be used in Syriac/Aramaic. And this rite was very important, although it's not used today, because it led to the creation of the Byzantine Rite, which is the center or the central rite of both the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Eastern Catholic churches, or in the Holy Land today. And this was done by combining both the rites of Jerusalem and the cathedral rite of Constantinople, which led to this blend we see now as the Byzantine Rite. There was Saint Helena's expedition. She went to the Holy Land to recover the relic of the true cross, and according to tradition, uh, a basil leaf sprouted from the ground when she found the site of the Holy Sepulchre, which was um, built over by the Temple of Venus. And early Christians originally saw the building of this temple as the Roman government trying to stamp out any potential veneration of the site. Another very important event, although it didn't happen in the city of Jerusalem, was the Council of Chalcedon. And this was a dispute whether Jesus had one or two natures. And this led to the um, Council of Chalcedon adopting the two natures formula of Christ's divinity. And that was promoted by the empire. So because of that, the Bishop of Jerusalem aligned with imperial power. And so, because of this, Greek clergy became way more influential over Aramaic speaking clergy and also Jewish Christian clergy. And so, this led to the big plurality we see in the Holy Sepulchre today because Copts, Syriacs, and Armenians, they are non-Chalcedonians, so they don't follow this um, formula for Christ's divinity and humanity. They believe in the one nature formula. And then we have the Persian invasions. Now, this devastated the city as well as the community, and it left it very weak. And during this invasion, they destroyed the Holy Sepulchre. And because of that, it left them very wide open for the Muslim conquest. Um, During that period, Patriarch Sophronius of Jerusalem, the imperial Greek bishop of the city, surrendered. And Jerusalem over time slowly became less Christians until they became a minority. And during that time they became oppressed. Although there was periods where they weren't and went back and forth. And another important thing that happened was the Crusades. Obviously, this was a very important event in Western history. And during that era, the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem was established, and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre became dominated by Latin clergy, and Eastern Christians and bishops got sidelined. And a very important thing that happened is that the Crusaders actually oppressed these Greek Eastern Christians in the city because many of them believed that they had sympathies to the Muslim armies, and so they were kicked out. And then eventually, after the Muslims regained control of Jerusalem, the Latin Patriarchate was abolished and the Greek Patriarchate returned to the city of Jerusalem. And so, in the modern era, these are some very important events that have happened. First is the Melkite Schism in 724. Now, this didn't even happen originally in Jerusalem. This was a result of the schism of the church in Antioch, the Greek Orthodox Church over there, where they elected a a patriarch who was sympathetic towards reunion with Rome. Because of that, he was deposed and replaced with a loyal bishop who did not prefer Roman union. And this led to several Christians in the Middle East switching their allegiance from the Greek Orthodox patriarchates to Rome forming the Melkite Greek Catholic Church, which retains its Byzantine liturgical functions and also stays in communion with Rome. And also, sorry, I'm just looking through notes. And another thing that fueled this schism has to do with the fact of originally the Greek Orthodox patriarchates of Jerusalem and Antioch could not use Arabic in their liturgy. And so a lot of faithful came into communion with Rome because they were allowing them to use Arabic in liturgy. Eventually, the church in Antioch allowed for Arabic in church, but the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate still does not allow it. And so this created tensions and divisions between the already small and weak Christian community. And then we have the 1852 status quo. So this was the Ottoman ruling that created the current system we use or we see in the Holy Sepulchre, where it's given to different spots are allotted to different churches. And so another very important thing following up this around the 1920s is still a very sensitive topic is the creation of mandatory Palestine and then the Balfour Declaration, which gave it which created a Jewish homeland. So Palestinian Christians, following this creation of the mandate, became British subjects, and Christians and Muslims at this time formed the majority of the city, but over time their influence and dominance shrank because of Jewish migration to Jerusalem, which shrank obviously their influence. And so originally we saw this movement, and this is why I have this flag up here. This was the Cross and Crescent movement, which was also present in Egypt. Now, this was a sort of thing where Christians aligned themselves with Arab nationalists, and so there was a interfaith, sort of standing up to the British. And unfortunately, this movement is mostly non-present anymore in Israel or in Palestine and Israel, but we still have this relic of that period where this was considered to actually be a national flag for Palestine to represent both the Palestinian Muslims, and Christians. And following that was the Nakba, was a devastating event for the Palestinian community in 1948. Now, this made many Christians in Jerusalem flee, and this created mass displacement. And some Christians in the city, they fled to East Jerusalem, while others immigrated abroad for safety. So the Christian community was kind of caught in the crossfire between the tensions between the Muslim Palestinians and the Jewish Israelis. And eventually, they developed lower birth rates compared to Muslims, which shrank their population. And some of these Palestinian Christians in the city and other parts of Palestine, they actually fled to Chile, which is why there is a pretty big, sizable Palestinian Chilean community over there today, and they are primarily Christian, although there are some Muslims there too. And these are a lot the most recent issues and developments within the community. So there, although we have a status quo agreement, there is still clergy clashes. For example, in 2008, Armenian and Greek clergy and faithful, they broke out into a brawl over what was some petty dispute. I think the Armenian bishops weren't letting the Greek bishops walk while they were doing a procession, and so they fought. And the Israeli police had to break up the fight. You can see videos about this online. It's crazy. And this is a very contentious flag right here. We have the flag of the Greek Orthodox Brotherhood of Jerusalem. So if you go to any like major Christian site in the city that is uh shared between Greek Orthodox and Roman Catholic or just Greek Orthodox, you will see this flag flying. And so there has been continued debate as to whether or not Greek clergy should have as much influence in the church. Um, over the Arab community who actually makes up the faithful in Jerusalem. Again, many Arab Christians in the city were fed up with this, and they switched their allegiance to Rome, made up the Melkite community. And this is a very long-standing issue because even though it still hasn't been resolved today, you see people mentioning this issue about Greeks having a lot of influence in Jerusalem as far back as the 1800s. For example, I can think of a mention of this like real quick. There was he is he's now an Orthodox saint, but there was this guy called Saint Raphael of Brooklyn, and he was an exiled Arab priest from Syria. And while he was in his exile, because he didn't agree with the Greek control of both Antioch and Jerusalem, he mentioned how the only Greeks you will see in the city of Jerusalem are celibate priests and monks, as well as many feel like the Brotherhood of Jerusalem forms a sort of Greek mafia in the city, and it's very contentious. There's also an issue with the Israeli police. Now, they often restrict worshippers from key Christian sites during important feast days and holidays. Most recently, I think during Easter, Israeli police prevented faithful from entering the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and that led to some skirmishes between police and some Christians. And oftentimes, this leads to arrests, and this fuels the conflict we see today. And we also see discrimination. So Christian residents and often tourists are frequently harassed by increasingly by ultra-Orthodox Jewish groups. Now, there's often videos where Palestinian communities are doing a procession around the streets, and although these people are the minority, let me make sure, like this still happens where these people spit on the Christians walking throughout the city. And also there's the worsening socioeconomic conditions for Palestinian Christians within the city over time has led to more and more emigration away from Jerusalem and Palestine as a whole, which furthers that shrinking of the Christian community in the city. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm pretty sure it was way too long. I probably went over time, but hey, thank you.